Chris, this is an exciting, even though it's kind of a somber word, an obituary.
What's your professional obituary say about you?
Main characters are always flawed. There's a character who has a problem, then they meet a guide who gives them a plan and calls them to action to avoid failure and to be transformed.
So the executive director reached out to me recently and he said, I need you to write your own eulogy. What do you want to be remembered for?
Strong companies, lasting partnerships, powerful events. Welcome to the Experience Builders Podcast.
Chris, this is an exciting, even though it's kind of a somber word, an obituary.
It is.
But kind of an exciting
It's not a very
conversation we're going to have.
word, is it, Khalil?
It's not. But where did you come across this idea, the professional obituary?
So topic today, right? What's your professional obituary say about you? So I am finishing up, and I've had a nice run in the leadership board and leadership roles of EDPA, but I'm in the final 6 months as president of EDPA. So the executive director, Dasher Lowe, reached out to me recently, and he said, I need you to write your own eulogy as president. We ask all presidents to do that, but it's, a couple of sentences that just, when people look back and read our past presidents, what you feel you brought that was most valuable to the EDPA and your time here. So you go, wow, I feel like there's a lot of things you could say, but what do you want to be remembered for? And it started me thinking about, everybody I know that works in our industry is so passionate, so committed. It's such a big part of who they are. What's that Disney executive that said, our what defines our who? And so, but do we just want it to be job related, Khalil? Or there's a ton of professionals in this industry that are 60 and above that are beginning to retire and tap out. And I think, at a certain age, you start going, what do I want to be remembered for or as contributing? So, and I don't think you have to wait to that age to start. So that's the lesson for a lot of our future leaders and our younger listeners. And that is, the way I look at this, Khalil, is if each one of us is the main character in our own movie, right? If you're still writing your storyline, so if you had an opportunity to sort of reverse engineer the happy ending of your movie, what scenes or episodes would you go back and put in to make sure we all know who you are, or we remember you for all those wonderful things that I'm sure your family knows about you, right? But maybe not all your professional colleagues. So, am I overreaching? Right? I don't know.
Well, I think a couple things. One, main characters are always flawed in a story, any story, right? They always have some shortcoming that they've got to overcome. Story Brand by Donald Miller is a great book that helps you kind of understand that every story has the same exact 7 elements. There's a character who has a problem or an opportunity maybe.
Yeah.
And then they meet a guide who gives them a plan and calls them to action to avoid failure and to be transformed. Every story has the same 7 elements. It's the same exact thing. So if you see yourself as that main character,
right,
you've got a problem or an opportunity. So there's flaws. The problem could be that you're, I don't know, for some reason the movie with Will Smith, where he's like a superhero is coming to mind, where he's like
Hancock,
got super strength. Hancock.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love that movie.
He's super strength, all this stuff, but he's a drunk, right? And that's his main flaw, but he can still be the hero, right? And heroes are flawed. So I think the reality is, if that's the case, you're thinking about yourself as the main character, you're going to have flaws, but people don't, you've just got to overcome those flaws. And also, it's the last thing that characters do that we remember. It's the end of the story where they save the day that we remember. So if you're 65 and about to retire and you feel like you haven't done enough in your professional life, it's not the past that actually matters. It's the last thing that you do that matters the most, right? And if you feel like you've been super successful and you've done it all, well, it's the most recent thing that actually matters, not all that stuff in the background. And like you said, if you're younger, you still have the opportunity to write your story quite a bit. Like it's not, you don't have to, you've still got time to fix those things, and you can backwards design it where like, I want to be at this is what I want my obituary to be. So how can I get to that point? What are the steps I need to get there? Which is kind of, I think, what you're basically thinking about a little bit with your professional obituary. So where are you at in your process?
So I find myself, so I have a couple months to get it done, but you find yourself reflecting on the things that you've done that maybe you think are meaningful for this community that I've been leading and been in service to. But there's been a couple. This is totally unscripted, so I hope she gets to hear this. But there's a gentleman who owned an exhibit house, in a secondary market. He was in Ohio. The company was called Queen Exhibits. Walt Queen was the founder and owner. He and his wife Cheryl owned it and ran it. I want to say 20 or 24 employees. Walt passed away very suddenly a few months ago. It's just devastating to the obviously to his family and his wife, the people that work there. But what's come out of it for a lot of people, because we spoke and honored him at the EDPA's recent meeting. I just read something in Exhibit City News about him. But what came out, and this is the eulogy, right? It's what an amazing man he was. It was the stories that were told was Walt figured when he owned his own business, he'd finally get a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, right? Well, once he became an owner, he didn't just want one; he wanted one for every employee, right? He was that guy. His last night on this earth, unbeknownst to him, was spent with his grandson painting the warehouse floors at his warehouse. It was like many entrepreneurs, it's a labor of love, right? But to do it with a child or a grandchild, that's its own joy there. He was all in for that. His employees knew he was all in for them. And so I can sit here and think about the advocacy work I've done, and I can sit here and think about roles I've played at different companies in the industry that I think made an impact on people. But this is what I'm talking about when ultimately, other people are remembering you and honoring you. It's the kind of person that you are. I'm sure if you're the top sales producer, that should get a mention in your eulogy. If you've traveled more miles than anybody to trade shows, that deserves a mention. If you were a great manager or a great operations or you were a top designer, all those things matter. But I think to your point about, main characters, we were talking about that earlier, can be flawed. Yeah, but they're just undeniably unique and authentic. And that's the stuff I think that, so I'm torn. I understand this is a professional request by an association for 2 or 3 sentences, but you have to pick the right ones. But I hope somewhere in there's an opportunity to describe the values and the principles that I espoused without making it sound like a braggadocio blurb. But and I don't know, maybe that's for other people to talk about, Khalil. But
it is, and I think if you really want to be a main character or you want to have like a really good story,
Yeah.
you don't make yourself the main character.
Right.
Like it's really about others. It's not about you. And I think that's the thing that some people miss out on is they're so worried about their own trajectory, their own story, what they've accomplished, what they've achieved, how they are perceived by others, what their status is, all that kind of stuff.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you there over
And
the sound of how fabulous I am. Is that the guy you're talking about? Like, don't be that guy.
exactly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's not about that. And you're not going to be remembered for what you did for yourself, but you'll be remembered by others for what you did for them. And that's what, I mean, we all want to do things that matter. And in order for things to matter, there has to be buy-in from other people, and they have to matter to other people, not just to us.
So these are the things I was thinking about as I went. If your goal is to be remembered for more than just the work, you know, ask yourself, were you a great colleague to work with? If so, why was that? Were you a difference maker in some way at your company, to your customers, and the community you work within? And how was that? Did you redefine excellence in some way at your job? So my birthday was last week, right? And so I got a guy, Mr. Jim Weiss. We worked together for decades ago with Skyline, and he went on to be a very successful sales management executive for one of the largest auto dealerships in Wisconsin chains. I get a call from Jim Weiss on my birthday every single year since we worked at Skyline. I hear from Jim more than I hear from some family members. And if he doesn't get me, he leaves me a voicemail. He always asks about my kids and my wife. It's a genuine, he does this for everyone he knows. It's amazing. So that's something he's going to be remembered for. Donna Miller is my controller. She's been with us for 14 years. She is the baker. She goes from office to office, and she's doing the accounting and finance work. But she always it's a crock pot, a jambalaya, a seafood. It's homemade cheesecake. She knows birthdays. She just den mothers. I mean, every guy that works in my warehouse goes, I always feel better when I see Donna in the building. Right. So the owner of Skyline, one of the original founder, I remember when Gordon took every single employee in the company, I think back then it was 80 people, to Hawaii. The first year they were named to the Inc. 500. This was back in the late 80s. What he didn't talk about is how many college tuitions he paid for people. He helped them with cars, with housing, with medical bills, and in some cases, quietly for people he really felt were contributing, and I was one of them. He gifted us company stock options. And he wanted to make sure that you got a chance to share in the upside because you were part of making that happen. Anyway, this is way more than just a job, right? So I guess we're talking about, do you desire to be somebody that transcends just sort of that employee coworker identity? And is there an opportunity for you to shine and let people know who you really are inside, right? And I think there are. And that's one of the great things about the EDPA organization is you do get a chance to show up and contribute in ways. In some ways, it's very quirky and individual, and some people do it at the chapter level, and some elevate to the national level. But yeah, sticking with our main character theme, I started thinking about movies with those characters. Like, what are the movies, Khalil? Are there any movies with a great character where you just can't go past it if you see it on TV, right? You just so for me, I love the movie Rudy. Have you ever seen?
Yep.
About the kid?
Yeah, it's a great movie.
The Natural with Robert Redford. That character, flawed character, but great character.
Yes.
Forrest Gump. Oh my God, I've seen it 50 times, but it's because every time
Forrest Gump's one of the best movies ever.
I agree. I don't know why I saw a golf movie the other day, but when I was thinking about this conversation, I thought about The Legend of Bagger Vance, right? Which was just another great.
So good.
Yeah. So if we have an opportunity to create our own storyline and become characters that are more than our jobs, right? Because, by the way, why are we talking about this? I think if we each take a minute and pause and think about what that would be like and what it would take, and then we actually begin to be more of that or show more of that, how much better would your company be, right? Or your
Yeah.
the community of professionals who's in your orbit. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I think you have to have a narrative. There's a narrative regardless, but you have to be intentional about the narrative.
yeah,
And when you put yourself into that mindset of like, I'm in the middle of a story, there's a great, like, how would you act if what decisions would you make? How would you act if there was a documentary crew following you around every day and they were going to share your story on Netflix or whatever? Like, what are the decisions you would make? How would you treat other people? How would you act? Would you would you take more risk? Would you do something more, that would create the storyline?
that's a great
And
question.
I think it's a great way to maybe think about your life because there is a story that's happening. And if you're not intentional about it, it looks like you just with your head down every day, scrolling your phone and just doing the bare minimum and whatever it is. And that's not exciting. It's not worthwhile. It's not something that you're excited to share with people. But
Yeah,
live a life and be intentional about the story of your life in a way that it's worth telling, it's worth sharing.
it is. So again, this is just my opinion. I think I know a lot of wonderful professional people that it would be easy to write their obituaries from a professional standpoint. I think the real opportunity for those of us that are interesting people is lean into contributing more than just what the day job or the job description is. Um, whatever that unique thing that's you, if you're Donna, if you're chefy, it's cooking and bringing joy to people that way. Um, if you're if you're funny and a high energy person, the way you move through the office and say good morning to people every day. There's people I can still picture. There's a man, if he's listening, John Zippe, right? He's with a company called On Location Labor Management. John and I worked together for 10 years at my company. John was just canned energy. I've often described him as he's like a gerbil on Red Bull, right? He's got a great heart. He's a can-do, will-do guy, wildly capable operations executive, and he's servicing customers and setting records with the accounts he takes care of because who doesn't want to work with John? So, yeah, I think. And by the way, also giving back in advocacy and other industry functions. His wife is cut from the same mold. She's on our board of directors at EDPA and one of the top designers that I've ever seen and worked with. So just great. But I think the really interesting obituaries will be the ones where we get to see more of you than just what your professional bona fides are, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
I think that's what sticks with people. And honestly, Chris, I think that's something that you've been great at. I think everybody in the industry would say that you've
I
been
appreciate you saying that.
remarkable, that you have made a difference, that you've done things that matter for this industry, not just as of late, but your entire career. And even someone that's even kind of outside the industry can see the impact that you've had, and to hear it from others is really special.
Well,
So
I'm sure
thanks for all of your years
I
of
appreciate you
service.
saying that. I'm sure I'm botching this, but some expression in the line of, for those who have received much, who have been given much, great things are also expected. So why, I've supported my family,
Yeah.
put kids through school, created a nice life for
Yeah.
my coworkers, my colleagues, as well as my family. So you do, yeah. Why? I think the right thing to do is you give back in the ways that make sense to you, and that's not,
Yeah.
everybody has to figure out what that is for them. But yeah, so this is what we do, right? So
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing and for being the influence that you are for everyone. Once you have your professional obituary, we should share it. maybe we'll catch up on the podcast, but you should put it on LinkedIn. I'd love to see it.
And at such a time, very, very far into the future, when this becomes necessary to be my traditional obituary, can I just talk about making sure there's an Irish wake and that there's whiskey and that there's, a lot of storytelling, embellishment is encouraged.
Yeah.
So anyway, but interesting exercise to go through. So I would, whether you do anything with it or not, that might be a fun exercise. Really, as a company team building thing, right? If everybody had to get together at a company meeting and one of the exercises was, I'd like you to spend 15 minutes writing your eulogy or how you'd like to be remembered, it might be interesting of what you learn about your coworkers in your own office, right? So that could be kind of and I think that could only bring people closer together. So there's my takeaway, right? Great exercise to do with your own staff. So
Yeah.
well, thanks for talking it through with me.
Okay.
I will, I'm no closer to finishing. Dasher, if you're listening, clock's ticking. I know. I'm working on it. So What did I say? 2 or 3 paragraphs is all he needs? Sentences. I know that. Sentences. Wow.
All right. Take care, Chris.
Okay, man. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to the Experience Builders podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content. Visit our website at crewxp.com to learn more about us. See you in the next one.